I'm Dean Walker, and welcome to the Poetry of Predicament podcast, a podcast for people brave enough to face humanity's challenges and problems, and most importantly, our numerous predicaments. The Poetry of Predicament is a podcast meant to inspire us to bring forth grace, beauty, and connection with the web of life in the face of a predicament-laden world. This is another episode of Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams. It's a special focus interview series here in the Poetry of Predicament. In this one, we listen to the clear voice of yet another deeply empowered youth as we explore nurturing ways to step into our uncertain global future with Telynia Grenfell-Lee. Welcome back to another episode of what is really a series with two names. It's, of course, the Poetry of Predicament podcast, which has been a long-standing opportunity for thought leaders to speak about their perspective on the kind of the tough challenges and predicaments of our time. But more importantly, and more focused on today's guests, this is also an episode of Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams. And this has been a special focus series of interviews that a number of us here at Living Resilience have been creating. And it's been just a rich journey with people from all walks of life, primarily in the USA and in Europe, have been the guests. We're looking to expand that out as soon as we can to other cultures and other nations. And this particular episode follows on a recording just earlier today that you may have already seen if you're watching these in order with Taliesin, I'm so sorry. I'm going to forget your many last names, and but I do remember your first name.
That's what matters.
We had a remarkable conversation, and so perhaps you could remind us in just a moment of your name, and then introduce us to your lovely daughter, who has also generously offered to be a part of this series. And Telynia, this is really a pleasure and a privilege for me because we unfortunately get far fewer of the youth, of the children of this formula than we do the parents. So I guess by definition, I probably should have named it something different to be able to get more of the youth into the picture. And I'm so very pleased that you're here. We had a remarkable conversation, remarkable for me as a listener, with your mom, and what seemed like she was recounting the story of her growing up in her, that part of the family, and how ridiculously well suited that growing up with those people, with those particular emphases in conversation, in parenting, and just being folks in the world. It's a little bit hard for me to imagine a more perfect fit for someone to be of service in where global culture needs it the most in these times. I'm not expecting anything from you. I have no idea what you're going to bring to this story. But I just wanted to let you know how it went from my perspective earlier with your mom. I want to warmly welcome you and thank you so much for being willing to just speak whatever is true for you about your experience of looking out into the world, how it looks to you, how it looks to your friends and to your family members from your perspective. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to add to this series. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so Taliesin, would you mind just reminding us of your full name? I'm so embarrassed.
Well, I'm an identical twin, Drew, so I'm really used to people forgetting my name. It's something, if it bothered me, I would have had an ulcer a long time ago.
Okay.
Um, my name is Telynia Grenfell-Lee, and this is my daughter, Telynia Grenfell-Lee, and she is 17, and she's my oldest, and she's somebody that I have a really wonderfully close relationship with, and I'm just delighted to be here with her and support her for this discussion today.
Yeah. So are you ready for your first question, or do you have something that you'd like to just start with without a question?
I'm happy to go right into the questions.
Okay, into the question. What I'm curious about is, what do you see when you look out into the world from your perspective? And why would it be important to have a conversation about it like we're having right now? What is it that is driving from inside of you that wants to talk about it? Why is it so important to talk about? And what are you seeing out in the world?
I guess with other youth, a lot of what I see is people being unsure of exactly how to be involved in the climate awareness, climate justice movement, because it just feels so overwhelming. And I think there's this sense that you either have to be working every minute of every day to work to save our planet, or you have to just go living your life as usual and go to school, hang out with your friends. And I think it's important to understand that it's very much possible to have both. It doesn't have to be either or. And I think this kind of interview is important because, I mean, I just got home from school, hanging out with my friends, playing the cello, going to classes, but now I'm sitting here doing this interview, so I can do both. I don't have to choose one or the other. I can still live my life and have fun with friends and my family.
Yeah. And so your experience of, especially other people your age, that it shows up, the expression of it being a binary, it being one or the other, as you were describing it, that it sounds like you're experiencing that many of the young people that you hang out with, that hold it that way. It seems like it's one or the other. And so they make their choice and they go down that path. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think a lot of the time we see other youth at climate justice events or on the news working so hard with climate justice and awareness, and we get this sense that we're never doing enough. If we can't be on TV and if we can't be up on the stage speaking at events, that means that we are not doing enough. So I think it's important to understand that everyone has their own part to play.
Yeah. So to get to the second part of that original question, I'm curious. It sounds like you're aware of a lot of different aspects of the world, and which of those show up as a concern, as something that has some urgency, something that really needs some attention from people now. And I'm curious, what are some of the issues, some of the symptoms out in the world that really get your attention, that really weigh on your heart a bit?
So I think a lot of the issues that are important to me go right alongside climate justice.
Hmm.
One is poverty in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one is sexism, racism, and I think a lot of them are actually related to climate justice in ways that a lot of people don't see.
Hmm. I got it. Yeah. There's one, there are a number of words that I end up speaking about quite a bit in these interviews. And perhaps the most common one that I'm always curious to find out how a person defines it for themselves, how they use this particular word, because it seems like it's a super common word. It's just really rare that we take the time to explain what we mean or to define it. I'm wondering how you would define the word hope.
I think, well, I'll just speak from personal experience. For
Yeah.
me, hope is that every morning when I wake up, even though we're facing huge issues like climate change and sexism and racism and everything I've listed, then hope is what helps me still get out of bed every morning and, yes, work to fight against these issues and to help educate other people about them, but at the same time, just getting out of bed and eating breakfast and brushing my teeth every morning and not laying in bed depressed, overwhelmed by all these issues that we're facing.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask Telynia what
Oh,
gives her
please.
hope? What do you feel like gives you the hope to get out of bed?
I guess something that gives me hope is knowing that I'm not alone and being able to work with my family, with my friends, and with people all around the world to work for climate justice. What makes us depressed and sad and scared is when we feel like we're alone in the crisis and in the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Along those same lines, I'm curious if there are particular people or, I'll give you a little sample of an answer to this question from my perspective to give you a sense of what I'm asking for. Are there people or other beings or places or even works of art or music that inspire you, that you can touch in with them to bring you some inspiration when you might not feel so connected or hopeful? And just a couple of examples for me. There are some pieces of music that I can count on. Even if I just hear the first few notes, I know that my whole demeanor is going to shift. I'm just going to be able to relax into a state that is far more comfortable and far more present than I might have been just a minute ago. I have the same thing really consistently with my dog. I just have this wonderful, immediate, just chilling out and returning to an optimal state. And there are a number of people that I can name as well, but I think you get the idea. And I'm just curious, are there elements like that, either human or beyond human, that you could mention?
I mean, obviously, there are many people that inspire me, and songs and paintings and beautiful photographs, animals, but there's actually something else. One of my favorite hobbies is downhill skiing. I love going skiing in the winter. It's my favorite thing about the winter, basically. And my favorite moment throughout the day is always when the sun starts to set, and just before I start to ski down the mountain, when I'm just standing at the top of the mountain, looking out over the town or the trees, and it's so beautiful and so captivating. And I feel, even though I'm surrounded by other people skiing on the mountain, it's almost like everyone else just kind of, everything else falls away, and I'm just standing there looking out. And it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember that because of climate change, we're losing our beautiful forests,
Mm-hmm.
and probably soon we're not going to have the energy to power chairlifts and gondolas, and we're losing our snow, or we're having just extreme weather conditions where it's unsafe to be outside. And that fills me with grief. So just that moment when I'm standing up there looking out in the cold, that's something that inspires me.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that there are some number of people that are also some kind of inspiration for you. Could you name a couple and what it is about them that brings you inspiration?
There are a lot of people, obviously, on the news and in the media that inspire me, but someone that inspires me, the person who inspires me the most is my mom. Because she raised us with so many beautiful ideas, especially through our faith tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we talk a lot about is forgiveness. And forgiveness is probably the thing that's helped me the most um, with climate change and everything else that's going on, because I realized a while back that there's so much anger from people my age and just youth against or towards the older generations, because there's this feeling of, oh, they didn't do enough. It's because of them that we're in this situation now. And that's great. And it's important to channel that anger into hard work. But for me, I can't carry that anger around with me every day, all day, throughout my life. I realized that in order to work and to help the movement, then I first just needed to forgive, and to forgive everyone who I felt like hadn't done enough, and to forgive myself for feeling like I wasn't doing enough sometimes.
Mm,
And that I learned that from you.
thank you. I'm curious at a more distant scale. Are there people that, for whatever reason, also inspire you, but from a distance? You know, people you might not even know personally.
Something that inspires me is not even people who have dedicated their lives to the climate movement, but people who are famous for a number of other reasons,
Mm,
and they have a huge fan base, a lot of people that look up to them, and they use their fame to spread awareness about climate change and other issues in general.
mhm.
Just anyone who does that, really, that's always inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And especially when people are able to do it without a lot of hatred or anger.
Yes. Thank you. One thing I've noticed, again, with many conversations with many people from different walks of life and certainly different ages, one of the more universal challenges seems like it's how to how to connect with people that don't think just like I do. You know, there's so much opportunity to have arguments with people, and there's so much anger we hear about it in the news and so on. I'm curious, do you encounter at school or in your circle of friends, do you encounter times of having difficult conversations or finding it difficult to find a common ground to have a conversation? I guess what I'm asking is, do you have any experience in what sometimes is called conflict resolution, or being able to sit in circle with people? I don't know if that is a term you use, but that's kind of how I describe it. Can you say what your experience is around that kind of thing?
I've definitely had issues with people at school with just relationship issues or even issues with teachers. And I guess the way that I've learned to cope with that or reach people when we don't kind of see things the same way is just trying to remain really calm and obviously working hard to see things from their perspective, usually by just asking them questions, you know? Why do you think this? Why do you believe this? A while ago, I was talking to someone, a classmate who was a Trump supporter, and he said something that I disagreed with. And instead of making fun of him or yelling at him, I just started asking him questions about why he felt this way exactly about this issue and what he had read about or seen in the news that made him feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to explain to him why I felt the way I did, but mostly just through asking questions and trying to be calm. Because I find that if I, in a difficult conversation, just remain calm and kind of gentle, then the other person, even if they're stressed in the beginning, eventually they're able to calm down and have a rational conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant. My my proverbial hat is off to you. That's some advanced knowledge. I mean, it sounds like you're saying it like it's second nature to you. It's just normal, and how you operate. I just wish I could clone you, to the tune of about 1 billion people. Um, I'm not a big fan of advice or asking the guests in this podcast to give advice, for that matter. But I am a big fan of the kind of sharing that you and your mom do so well. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to just go to the next level, in whatever the quiet place is that you look to just find what's true for you to say. I would ask if you could speak to people who don't have what I call basically a resource base. You have an extraordinary resource base in your family. It's just written all over you, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. There are so many of us that don't have that, and that if we're lucky, we're somewhere middle age or older, we might stumble into some of these skills, some of these resources. And for some of the people, old or young, who don't have that kind of resource base in their life, is there anything that you could share, or invite them to consider about how to start that bridge, how to start the bridge that ends up doing the kind of effortless conflict resolution, or just deep listening that you were just talking about doing? Compassionate listening is what I was hearing. That kind of thing. So I guess what I'm asking is there a way that you could just share with those of us who don't have those resources now, what you might suggest, what you've found useful as you've been learning and integrating these pieces into who you are?
I would say one thing that's incredibly important is just to be aware of how you're feeling. Like sometimes when I'm in the middle of an argument or a difficult conversation, just my heartbeat is faster and faster and faster, and I know I'm getting stressed and anxious and tense, and often that just comes out in the way that I'm speaking. And even though I don't realize it, I'm speaking louder or in a more stressed with a stressed tone. And I would say that being self-aware is a really important first step,
Mm.
even just if you're having a difficult conversation with your sibling or your parents.
Mhm.
And I would say that it's important to know when you need to take a break. Sometimes it's really just better to walk away and go back to the conversation later once everyone's calmed down a little.
Yeah.
And there's a quote that's helped me a lot, from Michelle Obama: "When they go low, we go high." And that quote changed my life because when someone would say something, just something mean to me or one of my friends, then I would get angry and want to say something mean back. But that helped me realize that instead I could just take a deep breath and tell them, what you just said wasn't okay. It wasn't nice. And simply walk away and move on and let them think about what I just said instead of trying to push back and fight back and say something meaner than whatever they had just said.
Got it. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, I'm curious if there's a question that you wish adults would ask you. I'm curious if there's a way in which you and perhaps others in your circles don't feel heard. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm throwing the door wide open. Is there, and if you just had a stage and a microphone and a far larger audience than we have right here, what would you want to say? How do you want to be heard that you might not get heard this way much in life? How would you use that opportunity and what would you say?
I get a lot of I'm sorries and apologies from adults, older generations. I'm sorry that we didn't take better care of the planet. I'm sorry that this is now on you, basically, and that it's having such a huge impact on your lives.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that. I really, really do. It means a lot. But when I was younger, I didn't think, when I was, I don't know, in elementary school, I didn't think, oh, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to dedicate my life to saving our planet and working against climate change. That's not what I thought. What I thought was, oh, maybe I want to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Maybe I want to be an actor or to write. And I think there's just a lot of grief for me that I feel like I just don't have that option anymore.
Yeah.
And I know that I can live my day-to-day life. I can still go to school. I can still have my friends. But when I think about the bigger picture, what comes after high school, I don't even know if I should go to college. I don't know if that makes sense. And I would actually really like to go to college. So
Yeah.
it's just something that's, I don't feel angry so much as just very sad about it. So I guess what I would like to hear after the I'm sorry and after the apology is not what are you doing, how are you working for climate justice right now, but how do you want to work for climate justice? What do you think you can do? Not what are you doing right now, not what group are you working with, but what do you actually feel that you can do in this, in your day-to-day life, in the next few years? What doesn't feel too overwhelming? What doesn't feel like this is just taking over my entire life? And then, once I've answered that, have them ask, okay, now what is it that I can do to help you?
Hmm.
I would love to hear that. I don't think anyone has ever said something like that to me.
Yeah.
So to hear that would make me feel really understood and really heard.
Mm. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Taliesin, I'm curious if there is anything that you might like to add from your perspective. Is there anything that you rarely feel invited to say? Anything that we may not have covered in the prior conversation, or something that surfaced here that would like a voice in answering?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the only thing I would like to add is a kind of general understanding of parenting. When I was growing up, I feel as though there was a sort of assumption that parents were meant to be benevolent dictators who guide and teach their children to be good people. And I know that in the 60s and 70s there was a real desire among a lot of people to find an alternative to that authoritarian style of parenting. And some people have ended up in a kind of permissive style of parenting, which doesn't really give children the guidance and the mentoring and the boundaries that they need in order to feel secure and safe. So I've been very grateful for democratic parenting and the ways in which it is kind of just an understanding of your family as a community where everyone has unique things to offer. Everyone has wisdom to offer from the time that they come, however old they are, even if they're not human. So one of the reasons that I'm really grateful for that is that it's allowed me to learn from my children. And I'm really grateful for all the things that I learned from them. I feel very lucky that I have been able to develop relationships of mutual respect with them so that they tell me things and I learn interesting things from them, as well as having them ask me things and learn things from me. I think that is a really important piece of resilience, is parents not feeling like it's all on them and kids not feeling like it's all on them. Kind of like Telynia just said.
Yeah.
We all really need to respect that each other is bringing something valuable, of great value. And there's an awful lot of pressure feeling like something's up to you. So I guess that's just the only thing that I would add, because it's helped me. And if you're familiar with parent effectiveness training, which doesn't call it democratic parenting, but it gives that kind of approach, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that a lot of people give up when they feel overwhelmed, and that's something that can feel overwhelming to parents, is feeling like I need to have all the answers. I need to answer to my children. What are we going to do about this? We as a family sat down and we've started having kind of climate conversations together, the four of us. What should we do? What are our options? Should we move to a rural homestead? Should we live in this retro suburbia model that David Holmgren mentioned? Should we live in a city and just work really hard to help create a climate resilient city with the people that are working so hard on that? What does a family make sense to us? And what's our budget? And how are we doing that? And it's really fun. It's hard. It's hard work, but it's fun to be able to sit together and just talk about it as a team and not feel like everything's up to me or my husband.
Is it okay if I add
Please.
something to that?
Please.
I don't know if you've already talked about this, but a couple of years ago when the two of us were being certified in permaculture design, and we were taking the course, I was the youngest by several years. I was the only teenager. And when our last project in the course was to look at a piece of land and practice permaculture design and design just exactly what we thought they should do, basically. And sometimes throughout that course, I felt like I wasn't as able to do as much. My ideas weren't as good just because I was so much younger. But in that last project, you said a couple times, and everyone else in our group said, that they were really grateful that I was there because as a younger person, I just had ideas that other people didn't have, and I was able to bring something very special to our group. And that experience, the permaculture design course, was life-changing for me because here I was with this group of adults, and at the beginning I felt really intimidated, but in the end I actually felt really heard and understood by every single person in that group, including our instructors. And that was a great experience, just working with people that weren't my age on such an important issue.
It has shifted me to be in conversation with the two of you. And Telynia, it's just really an honor to have you here with the clarity and ease of your voice. I'm so pleased that it is apparently so easy for you to find your voice and to share it. It's really been a gift. And I just again want to acknowledge what must be quite an extraordinary family to be a part of. You know, it's something. It's as a little piece from our earlier conversation, Telson, a little bit of your family is getting on me. You know, you're getting a little on me. That's my way of saying it. And it's a pleasure. And really, I look forward to hopefully staying in touch over time to just see what kind of expression comes from this family over time. And it would be such a joy to be a part of your community to see how you all ripple out into that community in a good way. So again, to both of you, I just thank you so much for your generous expression and your spending this time to contribute to this project, a project where people from all different walks of life and all different capacities come to either have something to say or something to hopefully hear to contribute to them. And I've certainly been contributed to by both of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again. It was really wonderful to be a part of this conversation. I wish you could join us for the solstice. We're going to make torches and go wander around in the woods.
Nice. Very nice. You know, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Where are you?
We're in Boston Metro West.
Got it. Got it. At
So
some
anytime
point,
you're in the area.
at some point, I will gladly take you up on that invitation. And I will, if you haven't already subscribed to the Poetry of Predicament podcast to receive the notification that this is getting posted, which should be posted by tomorrow is my target. And then you may want to subscribe also to the newsletter from my website, Living Resilience. There's a lot of new stuff coming out, of which this parenting project is one. And I would love to get y'all's feedback about it. It's people who really have this kind of substantial experience to draw on that I would love to get feedback from. So again, my thanks. And again, my desire to stay in touch. And please have wonderful, warm, snuggly holidays. And I look forward to our next time.
Me too.
Thank you.
Take care, Dean.
See you later. Thanks for watching another episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast, produced by Dean Walker and the Living Resilience Alliance, www.livingresilience.net. Music today from Michael Hedges, as always, and also Port Blue Into the Sea. Also available on our website, www.livingresilience.net, is a wide array of articles, online learning series, arranging group and individual resilience coaching, and sign up for our every other Tuesday free support group that we call Safe Circle Calls.